There is a moment that happened somewhere in Europe between 15 and 30,000 years ago that we cannot pin to a specific night or a specific place. But whatever happened that night changed the trajectory of our species. It did not involve fire, or tools, or language. It involved a predator that had every reason to kill us, and didn't. We have spent decades trying to understand how wolves became dogs, but that is the wrong question. The right question is what happened to us when they did.
Begin with what Ice Age wolves actually were, not the animals in wildlife documentaries today. Ice Age wolves were larger, more heavily built, and shared their landscape with megafauna, mammoths, woolly rhinos, cave bears, and giant deer. Their jaws were designed to process bone. Their social structures allowed coordinated pursuit across long distances. In parts of Eurasia, wolf packs competed directly with groups of humans for the same prey.
This is not a story about two species that were made for each other. This is a story about two apex predators who occupied the same ecological niche. Now, imagine a human camp, perhaps 25,000 years ago, somewhere in a river valley. A small group has stopped for the night, 10, maybe 15 people. Children sleep close to adults. Stone blades lie beside butchered bones. Fat burns in the fire because fat burns longer and cleaner than wood, and the people know this.
Beyond the firelight, the darkness has edges. Something is out there. Not one animal, several. Watching. The people know this too. Here is what those people also know. Wolves killed. Wolves stole carcasses from human kills. Wolves could take a child left unwatched at the camp boundary. And wolves could hear movement in darkness before any human ear detected it, which meant that by the time you knew a wolf was close, it had already decided whether to attack.
The sensible strategy had not changed in thousands of years. Make noise, wave fire, throw stones, keep them out. And yet, something happened at some camps that did not happen at others. Certain wolves did not leave.
Here is what we know about those wolves. They were not the boldest animals in their pack. Bold wolves approached too fast and got killed. They were not the largest either. Size was irrelevant if it carried an animal 2 steps past the point where a spear would find it. The wolves that survived the edge of a human camp were the ones that had learned, or perhaps were already wired, to do something that sounds simple but is extraordinarily difficult for a predator. Wait. Not freeze, not flee. Wait. Remain present, remain visible, remain calm. While every instinct encoded across hundreds of thousands of years of evolution is saying, this is dangerous, this is a rival, you should attack or you should run. The wolves that stayed at the boundary discovered something.
Humans wasted food, not because they were careless, because they were selective. Ice Age hunters targeted animals rich in fat because lean meat alone cannot sustain the human brain at full capacity. A group that had eaten well left behind bones, organs, scraps of hide, and tissue with real caloric value. For a wolf willing to wait until the humans were done and the fire had lowered, that waste was a meal that cost nothing. No human planned what happened next, but every camp, every night, created the same test. The wolves that charged into the fire died. The wolves that fled at the first human movement gained nothing and moved on. The wolves that held the edge, that could manage their own fear response long enough to wait, those animals ate. They survived, they reproduced. Their offspring inherited something their parents had paid for in patience and proximity, a slightly longer threshold before panic, a slightly higher tolerance for the smell and sound of people. Humans were running an unintentional selection experiment on wolf behaviour, and it ran every night at every camp across thousands of years.
Now, here is where most versions of this story stop. Wolves discovered free food, they became camp scavengers, over time they became dogs. But that explanation has always had a hole in it. A scavenger is not a companion. Rats eat human waste, and we have not domesticated rats. Crows exploit human environments with extraordinary intelligence, and we do not bury them beside our dead. At some point, something changed in the relationship between humans and the animals at the camp edge. The question is what? In 1914, workers cutting into a basalt quarry near Oberkassel, Germany, broke through the ceiling of a grave. Inside were two humans, an older man and a younger woman, buried together approximately 14,000 years ago. Among the grave objects was a third set of remains, initially described as a wolf. Decades later, when researchers reunited bones that had been separated between institutions, they re-examined that third skeleton. It was not a wolf. It was a dog. 7 months old. That fact alone would be significant. A dog buried with humans during the late Ice Age suggests the relationship had already moved from the camp boundary to something more interior. But the real discovery was not in the burial.
That fact alone would be significant. A dog buried with humans during the late Ice Age suggests the relationship had already moved from the camp boundary to something more interior. But the real discovery was not in the burial. It was inside the animal's teeth. Teeth grow in layers. When an animal experiences a period of severe physical stress during tooth development, that stress leaves a visible record, a disruption in the enamel that researchers can read decades or centuries or millennia later. The Oberkassel dog's teeth contained those marks. Multiple episodes, spread across weeks.
The pattern is consistent with canine distemper, a viral disease that attacks multiple systems simultaneously. A puppy with active distemper experiences fever, vomiting, diarrhea, discharge, loss of appetite, and dehydration. In its neurological phase, the disease can cause tremors, loss of coordination, and seizures. Without intervention, most infected puppies die within the first 2 weeks. This puppy did not die within the first 2 weeks. It survived several episodes of serious illness across a period of weeks 14,000 years ago in a mobile hunter-gatherer group whose members had no concept of veterinary medicine, no antibiotics, and no guaranteed food supply. For a puppy with distemper to survive that long, someone had to bring it water when it could not move to water itself. Someone had to bring food close to its mouth when it could not chase food. Someone had to manage its body when it lost control of its own physical functions. The puppy consumed resources, it consumed time and attention. It provided nothing practical in return. And when it died, after all of that, the people it had lived with placed its body in their grave. This changes the entire shape of the story. The relationship between humans and dogs did not begin with utility and end with affection. By 14,000 years ago, it had already reached a state where utility was not the condition for care. The animal did not have to earn its place every day. It already had a place.
Now, here is the part of the story that almost never gets told. We talk about what humans gave dogs, food, protection, eventually selective breeding. We talk about what dogs gave humans, hunting ability, camp security, load-bearing, warmth. What we rarely ask is what dogs did to the architecture of the human mind. Consider what a dog actually does in a human group.
It extends the sensory boundary of the camp. A sleeping dog can detect movement, unfamiliar scent or sound before any human in the group responds. This means that a camp with dogs functionally has a larger perimeter than a camp without them. Not because the dogs patrol it, but because their nervous systems are wired to process environmental information that human nervous systems cannot access. For tens of thousands of years, humans with dogs had earlier warning of predators than humans without them. Earlier warning means more time to respond. More time to respond means lower mortality from predator attack. Lower mortality means more surviving offspring. But here is the less obvious consequence. If dogs are managing part of the threat detection load, humans can redirect cognitive resources. Staying alert to every sound in the darkness is metabolically expensive. It competes with sleep, with memory consolidation, with a kind of extended planning that requires sustained attention. A group that offloads some portion of that vigilance to a dog is a group that can think longer thoughts. There is something even more specific happening when humans and dogs work together on a hunt.
A human hunter planning a pursuit must build a mental model of prey movement, where the animal went, where it is likely to go, what terrain features will funnel it. A dog tracking by scent is operating on completely different information, chemical traces, ground disturbance, biological markers invisible to human senses. When these two systems run in parallel, the combined model of prey location is more accurate than either system alone. But running those two systems together requires something that goes far beyond training commands. It requires each species to develop a working model of the other's cognition.
The dog must learn what human posture, gesture, and voice predict. The human must learn what dog behavior, orientation, and arousal level indicate. Both must update those models in real time during coordinated action under physical pressure. Researchers now have substantial evidence that modern dogs are extraordinarily sensitive to human communication signals, following pointing gestures, tracking gaze direction, reading emotional states from facial expressions, in ways that wolves raised by humans do not reliably replicate. This is not simply training.
Something about the domestication process itself shifted how the dog brain attends to human social information. But the reverse is also true. Humans who live and work with dogs measure differences in how they process social signals from non-human animals. The capacity to read intention across a species boundary, to trust behavioral cues from something that is not you and cannot speak your language, is a cognitive ability that humans appear to have developed or sharpened through tens of thousands of years of living with dogs. We did not simply teach dogs to understand us. We taught ourselves to understand something alien.
Follow this forward. A group with dogs hunts more efficiently, it sleeps more safely, it has more cognitive bandwidth for planning, its children survive predator encounters at higher rates. Over generations, those advantages compound.
Now, consider what the dog relationship required humans to develop in order to function. Delayed reciprocity. The ability to invest in an animal that cannot immediately repay the investment on the basis of an anticipated future return. You keep the dog alive through a bad season because you expect it to be useful in the next hunt. You keep it alive when it's sick because the relationship itself has a value you're preserving. This is not the same as keeping a tool in good repair.
A tool does not have an interior state you need to manage. A dog does. Managing the interior state of another being, anticipating its needs, reading its distress signals, adjusting your behavior to maintain its cooperation, is precisely the cognitive architecture that underlies human social organization at scale. We did not develop those capacities for dogs, but dogs may have been one of the environments in which we practiced and refined them. A tool does not have an interior state you need to manage. A dog does. The relationship also required humans to develop something even more difficult, the ability to maintain trust across a boundary of genuine danger. The dog was never fully predictable. It retained the teeth, the speed, and the prey drive of a wolf. At any moment, under the wrong conditions, it could cause serious harm. Keeping the relationship functional required humans to continuously update their model of the animal's state, to read behavioral signals that indicated rising stress or threat, and to manage the environment in ways that kept the animal's danger contained. That is not a passive skill. It is an active, ongoing, cognitively demanding practice, and it ran every day for tens of thousands of years before humans ever tried to organize themselves into cities, manage trade relationships with strangers, or build legal systems to contain the danger that members of their own species pose to one another. The dog may have been one of the first extended exercises in what we would now call theory of mind, applied across a relationship of genuine mutual risk. Return to the Ice Age camp. The wolf is at the boundary. The fire is between them. The humans have weapons and the wolf has teeth, and both of those facts are true simultaneously. We usually tell this story as a story about domestication. Humans domesticated wolves. Humans brought a wild animal into their world and changed it. But look at what actually happened. The wolf changed its behavior to survive proximity to humans, and then humans changed their behavior to manage proximity to the wolf. And then both species, across thousands of years of shared pressure, changed the cognitive and social structures they used to navigate the world. The dog is not simply a wolf that learned to trust humans. The dog is evidence of a feedback loop between two species running for 30,000 years, in which each one shaped the other's capacity to process social information across a boundary of real danger. By the time the people at Oberkassel placed a sick puppy in their grave, they were not just expressing affection for an individual animal. They were honoring the outcome of a relationship that had made them, in some small but compounding way, more capable of being human. So here is the question the standard story never asks. If the cognitive capacities dogs helped us develop, reading intention across difference, maintaining trust under risk, investing in relationships whose return is delayed and uncertain, if those are foundational to the social architecture of human civilization,
then the wolf did not simply cross the firelight to enter the human world. It helped build it.
And the creature sleeping at the foot of your door tonight, lifting its head toward a sound you did not hear, it is not doing something primitive. It is doing something the two of you have been practicing together for 30,000 years. The only question left is which one of you started it.